The embargo has lifted, and it is now confirmed that yes, AMD is re-releasing the 5800X 3D on June 25th for $349 suggested price, as well as a 7700X 3D being announced, which should be clocked a little bit lower than the 7800X 3D and priced at $329 on July 16th. And they are announcing that the 9070 GRE is getting a global launch priced at $549 and releasing on June 1st. That's tomorrow. So this is coming out here pretty quick on that one. They've got some performance claims on the GRE. Keep in mind that benchmarks have been available on this. It launched in China a year ago. So we'll definitely dive into that. But we'll also talk about some other quicker stories today, like Intel's Arc G3 handhelds getting officially announced with some prices, some performance claims based on that, some leaks regarding Nvidia's N1X and N1 laptop chip specifications and leaked benchmark scores, more signs that the Steam machine is about to launch, but at what price, and then some of the weird, Computex cases and all sorts of things, and as well as some gaming news and all of that. So let's circle back around to the AMD gaming launches. We'll talk about the GPU in a minute. Let's wrap up the CPUs actually quickly ahead of time. So a 5800X 3D getting a re-release this many years later does seem kind of weird, but I actually really like this. It also seems weird that it's priced at $349. That is higher for the 5800X 3D than what you're seeing for the 7700X 3D, which will be priced at $329. Now, why I think the 5800X 3D might still have a market at what seems like a weird price, because wouldn't this be a slower CPU compared to the 7700X 3D? Probably so, probably noticeably so. However, people who are on the AM4 platform, if they were looking to upgrade to a 7000 or 9000 series chip, they'd have to not only buy a new motherboard, but they have to buy new memory with DDR5, which prices are insane right now. But if somebody already has a DDR4 AM4 motherboard and wants a CPU upgrade, the 5800X 3Ds have been pretty expensive, and after they went out of production. So being able to jump into one of these at $349 as your entire upgrade cost, because you just slot it into your existing system, and now you're not having to buy new memory, but you get a healthy CPU boost, and the 5800X 3D still performs well in all of the latest games, I could actually see this be a pretty interesting upgrade path option for people who are on AM4 in the current DDR economy. So while it would be nice to see it priced less, I do think that this could make sense for a lot of people who want a CPU upgrade, because if you're on like a Ryzen 2000, 3000, or even 5000 series, but without having an X3D 5000 series chip, you could get some healthy performance gains without having to buy the new memory. Now, the 7700X 3D, I think this one, it's nice to have more options. Does it make sense price to performance-wise? Well, starting at $329, let's assume it actually hits that price on the market. The 7800X 3D is still widely available new, and it looks like if I wanted to buy one today in the United States, I could get it at around $370 or so. So you would save a little bit of money getting this at $329. Saving $40 or so isn't nothing. And so honestly, this would probably still have really good gaming performance. You get the clock speeds a little bit reduced compared to the 7800X 3D. But you still get the big cache, which is really what helps with a lot of the gaming performance. So I would still expect this to be interesting, but compared to the 5800X 3D, which is going to be interesting to a lot of people who are upgrading an existing system where they already own the memory, I think the 7700X 3D has a little bit of a harder sell, just because if you're already on a AM5 platform, then you probably have, I guess the worst CPU you might have would be what, like a 70, is it 7500F or 7400F? I always forget CPU namings. One of those, but those haven't even been widely available in the United States. So at least in the United States, like 7600 is probably about the weakest you would be. This probably will be faster for gaming, but would you want to upgrade, for this price right now? So that's a little bit less of just an obvious upgrade for a lot of people, I think. But it's nice to have more options. But for new builds right now, the big issue isn't CPU pricing and availability. It's the memory if you're having to build a new DDR5 system. So that's overall my thoughts on that. Again, the 7700X3D basically slots in with a 4 gigahertz base clock and 4.5 gigahertz boost, reduced from a 4.2 base and a 5 gigahertz boost on the 7800X3D. That I've just realized my fat head is like in the way of all this. Here, I'm out of the way now. Sorry, that's what I was pointing at in the slide. So 7700X3D base is reduced to 4 from 4.2, and boost is reduced from 5 to 4.5, but it keeps the same 104 megabytes of L2 and L3 cache, and the TDP remains 120 watts. So that's how that fits into that overall lineup. Now, how about the GPU news with the 9070 GRE? So again, this is a 12 gigabyte GPU, which is cut down not only in VRAM capacity, but also in compute units and in memory bandwidth due to cutting down the memory bus to configure the 12 gigabytes that they've got here. So is this going to be interesting? I'm going to be honest, at $549, it's a lot less exciting than if they had launched at a significantly lower price. So AMD is marketing this heavily against Nvidia's 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte and claiming that it's 22% faster on average. Again, these are AMD first-party benchmarks, so you might want to compare them to independent reviews. And they're claiming that because it also comes in at a slightly lower price at $549 compared to $569 on the 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte, that it would offer 26% better value since it offers 22% more performance at a slightly lower cost. Now, my issue really isn't this comparison. My issue is how it compares against a 5070, because the 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte is NVIDIA's worst option in that price point. I just did a head-to-head comparison of the 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte against the 5070, and in the US market, I know prices can change globally. The 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte is available at $570 and up, like AMD claimed. We have yet to see if the 9070 GRE does actually hit the $550 MSRP. I have no reason to believe it wouldn't, because that is already a fairly high price. But again, that's just based on claims rather than actually seeing them on sale at this point. But anyway, assuming those prices line up, it is slightly less expensive than a 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte. But the 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte is already priced way too close to the 5070. The 5070 comes in at $600 right now in the lowest priced models, although frequently they are $630 or up, which puts a little bit more of a gap. But that's a bit of a problem because the 5070 is already, in my testing, in my 5070 against 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte video that I released just a couple days ago, or was that yesterday? Might have been yesterday, day before, whatever. A couple of days ago, maybe. I had it, was it 28% fast? No, 26% faster on average than the 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte, which would put it as a little bit faster than the 9070 GRE based on how AMD is making their own claims of how this would slot in against those. So you would expect the 9070 GRE to have the same VRAM capacity as a 5070 and slightly worse performance for $50 less, it's looking like. So NVIDIA minus $50 doesn't tend to go super well for AMD, especially when they're not offering additional VRAM, and they're not doing that here. So it's that head-to-head comparison where I'd be a little more concerned how it slots into the market. And then there's within AMD's own lineup, because the 9070 non-XT and non-GRE is coming in at $600 right now. So that's only a $50 gap to get a card that has 16 gigabytes of VRAM and a lot more performance. So that's another problem for the 9070 GRE. So I would have been a lot more excited about this product if it came in at $499. If it was at $499, I could now see not bothering to compare it against the 5070 or the 9070 because there's a significant gap. And now you can even start comparing it as a 12 gigabyte card up against some of the 8 gigabyte cards in the market, and that becomes super interesting. So I think if this had been $50 less, it could have been something really exciting. But at current pricing, why wouldn't you just spend the extra $50? Like, that's less than 10% of the price, right? To get cards that are probably noticeably better, either a little better from Nvidia, but you get the Nvidia, feature set and all that. Or if you stick with AMD, you get more VRAM and more performance, again, for less than 10% price increase. That seems kind of brutal comparison-wise. Anyway, official launch June 1st, and so I'm sure you'll be seeing some reviews coming out soon as well for the worldwide market. But remember, there's already benchmarks available because this card is already available in certain regions and has been for a year. Now, I am very interested in Intel's Arc G3 chips in gaming handhelds. The only thing that's making me less interested is just the price of buying anything that has memory in it right now. So it looks like the MSI Claw 8EX will be launching with the Arc G3 out on June 23rd, but unfortunately it's going to be $1,500. Now, why am I interested in these Intel chips? Well, the main reason I'm interested in these Intel chips is because AMD's gaming handhelds are still using RDNA 3.5 architecture on their APUs, and that means that they're not compatible currently with FSR4 upscaling. Now, AMD has announced a July release for RDNA 3 compatibility with FSR4, so maybe that will be more interesting, but we also have to see how performant it is. But Intel's Arc G3 should be compatible with their XeSS upscaling, which is with the full XMX supported version. If you're unaware, the XeSS that runs on competitor GPUs isn't the same thing. It's not as good, not as high quality as what you get on actual Intel hardware, which uses a different pathway using their XMX cores for the matrix multiply and compute acceleration for the AI inferencing. Long story short, seems like a much more up-to-date kind of feature set. And on handheld gaming, upscaling can often be required if you want good performance in some of the latest releases, but using like FSR3 often looks really chunky at those lower resolutions. So that's why this would be interesting. Also, just performance reasons. Now, we don't have independent benchmarking at this point in time, but I found this here at videocards.com. All my sources will be linked in the video description. Apparently, they discussed, I haven't watched this video yet, but apparently Gamers Nexus has a video talking with Intel's, it's Tom Peterson, right? And he was talking about the chip and its performance. They're talking about some huge generational uplifts against themselves, like 44% faster on average versus their Core Ultra 7 258V at 35 watts versus 30 watts, so using a little bit more power for that, but still 44% faster. Again, this is first-party benchmark results, so you have to take everything with a grain of salt. But also comparing against AMD, looking at it's putting the MSI Claw 8EX AI Plus with the Intel Arc G3 Extreme up against the Asus ROG Xbox Ally X with AMD Z2 Extreme, both set to 35 watts. They're claiming 42% faster on average against AMD's chip. Again, these are first-party Intel benchmarks, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. But that is claiming a pretty big lead when matched to the same power level. But interestingly, they're also claiming that if you want more battery life in a handheld, which can be a pretty big deal for handheld gaming, at 17 watts, they claim that they can essentially match-ish the performance of AMD's Z2 Extreme at 35 watts. So they're saying at about half the power, they can get similar performance, which again, in handheld, having that kind of performance at 17 watts is, I think, a pretty big deal. So these do sound extremely interesting from both raw performance and power efficiency standpoint, as well as from having that, better upscaling and all of that. It would be nice if more games had XeSS support, but a lot do. Given how small Intel's market share is, it's actually been impressive how many games do launch with XeSS support. But at the same time, it's certainly not equal to AMD's FSR4 support, and even they are trailing, NVIDIA's upscaling support. Now, on that note, how about NVIDIA? NVIDIA has given some cryptic descriptions of that there'll be like some kind of revolution or change to personal computing, etc., blah, blah, blah. A lot of people are expecting that to be their N1X and N1 laptop chips, which are expected to be like an ARM-based system. And Videocards.com is claiming to have some information from a source about what is going to be officially announced here. Now, should we believe that? Well, they're claiming that so the author here at Videocards.com is saying, I only agreed to share this after seeing the documents, and those were provided. However, one of the slides was dated 2024, which shows how long NVIDIA has been working on this product, and claims the embargo lifts tomorrow when full specifications should hopefully be confirmed. Perhaps not all variants will be announced, and perhaps not all of them will be available in laptops, but this was the plan. So that's kind of the caveat there, that this is not official yet, but we should be hearing something official soon-ish. Now, Videocards.com did accurately leak AMD's 9070 GRE launch date and pricing ahead of time, but they're not saying it was the same source for both of these. In fact, it likely wasn't. So, just because it's the same Videocards.com as your source doesn't mean that their own source is the same. So, in other words, Videocards.com does have a pretty good track record when they cite their own sources, but make of it what you will. So they're claiming that the N1X is essentially the same thing as the GB10 that's used in the DGX Spark, which is the little like mini AI workstation PC thing that NVIDIA has already launched. But they're claiming that there's 3 other N1 chip variants, and the standard N1 is entirely new and perhaps more interesting, and it may target a more affordable segment. If you want to kind of see the summary table here, I don't want to spend too long on all of this since it's not confirmed, but this is what we're seeing on the kind of comparison chart. So the N1X 675, the CPU would be 10 and 10, with the Blackwell GPU at 48 SMs, whereas the N1X 650 looks like it'd be 9 and 9. I think that's performance cores and efficiency cores at 40 SMs, so a little bit cut down, but not a lot, and still hitting a similar TDP range. Whereas the N1 version 1, I guess you would call it, would be much more significantly cut down at 8 plus 4 on the CPU side, and then all the way down to 20 SMs on the GPU, and then a further reduction to the N1 number 2 at 7 and 3 on the CPUs and 16 SMs on the GPU. Also, these coming in at a lower power target figure. So yeah, again, with any kind of PC device launching these days, a huge question mark is what will the performance look like. Also, in this case, if these are running on ARM chips, then there's the question about like what will the, if you're running, if you're gaming on it or something like that, how will that play out? There is a leaked Geekbench score for Geekbench 6, where you could then compare the N1X up against Apple's 2023 M3 Max chip, and seems to be losing. But again, this is a leaked benchmark as opposed to any, official score or anything like that. So, and it's also just Geekbench. So anyway, make of that what you will. It's also another sign that these probably are coming, given that we're starting to see the Geekbench scores leak out and things like that. Now, Steam Machine news. So Valve did promise, I believe it was a first half of the year launch for Steam Machine. And so we're pushing up against the first half of the year here, right? So you would expect them to either announce an official delay or to actually launch the Steam Machine soon. There have been a lot of signs behind the scenes that the Steam Machine launch is coming soon. So at Notebook Check, all my sources will be in the video description, we're seeing the headline, Steam Machine launch appears near as Valve adds welcome tour to Steam backend. They seem to be getting the information here from Brad Lynch, who is posting some updates to Steam's backend, which seem to translate as a welcome to the Steam Machine code. So if you buy your Steam Machine, you'd probably launch into this as you set up the device, which is cool. Now, just because this is incoming to an update doesn't necessarily mean that they wouldn't delay the actual hardware because of prices and whatnot. But at some point, they gotta kind of just launch it and see how it goes. Regarding pricing, so when the Steam Deck OLED came back in stock with the higher memory capacity version, or storage capacity, I should say, version coming in at almost $1,000, a major Steam Deck leaker, or Valve leaker, mentions that the price he had already heard 2 months ago for how the Steam machine would have to adjust to current, market trends with memory and storage pricing already said it would be higher than this. So anybody hoping for a less than $1,000 Steam machine are probably going to be out of luck. We'll have to see what actually happens. We have to see how much margin Valve wants to make on these. We also need to see if they'd even be willing to sell at cost and just hope to make money on, increased Steam sales or something like that. I don't think Valve would be willing to sell at a loss and subsidize it the same way, some consoles have done in the past. But hey, you never know. But I think realistically, they need to come in at a price where not only can they hit that price today, but they need to feel pretty confident that they're not going to have to immediately raise the price again if memory prices keep going up. So they have to hit a price target that they can probably feel they can have some sort of stability with over the next year or so, would be my guess. And so I don't think it's going to be priced super aggressively. Anyway, I still think that they'll have a lot of interest in this. Because I think some people, like the PC market is weird right now. There's people with a lot of cash to burn on their hobby, and some of them will just want one of these because it's cool, and they'll pay pretty much whatever it costs. But it's another segment of the market, your kind of mid-range and low-range, where things are very, very different. I think where a lot of people are looking for value or just holding off and buying and upgrading. So I think at least the initial wave of supply of these would probably sell out at almost any price. That's just my personal guess. But then it's how will the long-term demand for these hold out if the price is high? Once the people who have a lot of money to burn on their hobby just think these are cool, buy them, then you've got to start fighting on a little more of does the value actually make sense? Now, they're trying to differentiate themselves by offering just really a product that's a bit different than what else is on the market. For example, to me, just the fact that this should work more like a console in the sense that, like, with my PlayStation 5, I can just hit the button on the controller and it wakes up my entire surround sound and TV system through like the HDMI control stuff. As opposed to when I hook up my gaming PC to my TV, I have to like turn it on, turn the PC on, and then the TV on, then switch like my AV receiver to the correct input. It just doesn't play as nicely in that kind of an environment. And then, Windows can be obnoxious, and sometimes it tries to sell me, more cloud subscriptions every single time I turn the stupid Windows PC on and all of that, So there's something here, right? But yeah, I'm really interested in how the Steam machine plays out past the initial wave of interested buyers buying them. Now, in other Computex news, because we get all sorts of things announced here, MSI is announcing an interesting way of bringing AI to PC cases. So they're giving you an agentic AI, which if you've been following the AI space, that's the new big buzzword, is the agentic AI, where the AI actually can operate things itself on your PC. So they've got this little hologram screen with a character model there that you can speak to, and it's agentic AI in that you could ask it to like adjust your case fans and lighting and RGB and things like that. So now, honestly, I'm not offended by having something like this on a PC case, but my question is, if this is running the AI agent locally, how much of your system resources are being used to do that? Because, well, it might be kind of cute to have a little hologram character that you could ask to change your RGB lighting if you wanted to. If that's going to cost me like 20% of my gaming performance, probably not worth it. So I imagine you could turn it off or whatever, but like, I don't know. Anyway, they say that the Lucky Claw companion is your personal interactive AI. The Megvision X2 AI Plus introduces Lucky Claw, MSI's agentic AI companion. Lucky Claw responds to natural speech commands, enabling seamless hands-free control of performance profiles, MSI monitor settings, RGB lighting, and more. And they're promising future skill updates to ensure Lucky Claw grows alongside its user, continuously expanding its capabilities over time. And again, the way they're displaying the character is through the AI Holo stage, digital companion physicalized. Anyway, so it is a cylindrical display interface integrated directly into the chassis. The AI Holo stage creates a true physical AI presence, giving digital companions, desktop pets, and custom third-party AI avatars a tangible form. Unlike anything previously seen in consumer computing, you guys, are you not excited? I mean, I'm not, but anyway, seems pretty like AI generated marketing slop, along with the AI generated RGB lighting controller here. But anyway, honestly, like I said though, like this kind of thing, I think could be kind of neat. You have your little character, you tell your PC to do stuff. Okay, I just hope that it's not using massive amounts of system resources in order to do so. Otherwise, it's kind of pointless. Anyway, Fantex has their own interesting case design, which is certainly different. So I think the idea here is you can put your GPU in this little box, and then you've got a little box around your CPU cooler. I'm assuming this box kind of hides your power supply and other stuff in there. And then instead of having a big box with a lot of empty space, that empty space is just kind of collapsed down, right? So that's certainly interesting and different looking. And I think a lot of case manufacturers right now are looking for something to stand out with because, man, if you watched Gamers Nexus's video a week or so ago, talking to a bunch of like case manufacturers and things like that, the market is not looking good right now because if people are holding off on upgrading their PCs or building a whole new PC, especially due to RAM and storage pricing, then it's hard to sell cases, right? So I think some places are looking at how can they, differentiate themselves, launch some sort of new product to try to get some revenue. So that's where you're seeing these kinds of, interesting case designs here. You got this kind of case design here. People are trying to find some way to stand out with these. Now, in some gaming news, we saw recently that The Witcher 3 Songs of the Past DLC is really beyond just DLC. They're calling it a full expansion pack. And CD Projekt Red has said that it will rival Blood and Wine's sizable scope. So this looks to be a pretty major update to the game, not some just like couple hour long, story mission or something like that to set up Witcher 4. Now, a lot of people do expect the story here to be setting up The Witcher 4, but it looks like it'll have a sizable scope. Anyway, I still think it's pretty cool that a game that old is getting a big update, to set up the sequel. And considering how many copies of Witcher 3 have sold, like there's potentially a huge market for this. Like they could end up making very good money off of this. So in that sense, it's almost a question like maybe more game developers actually should be doing this. And if you have some game that sold huge copies years ago, maybe continue to release updates for it rather than just work on the sequel. I don't know. We'll see how this ends up selling and all that. Also, the new 007 First Light game has announced that it sold 1.5 million copies in less than a day, so seems to have strong first day sales. I've actually finished the game now, and I quite enjoyed it. While nothing about it was completely mind-blowing beyond anything I'd ever seen, it was a solid, enjoyable James Bond story narrative, and that's where I feel like these developers had kind of pushed beyond a lot of what they'd done in the past, was with a much more action movie narrative kind of driven thing, tying the gameplay sections together. And the gameplay itself, I thought was pretty enjoyable. So anyway, I ended up enjoying the game quite a bit. I'd probably rate it like an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10 after completing it. And I'm glad to see that it's selling pretty well, especially seeing a developer who doesn't usually hit the big kind of more narrative kind of production values like that, doing that and within their own game engine. And like I said in my performance review of the game is fairly performant at its highest settings compared to a lot of other recent games at their highest settings. I just felt like it didn't offer a ton of scalability to the lower end on that side of things. But I like what they're doing with their own engine. And like it does some things way better than Unreal Engine 5 would, for example, because like there's some scenes in this game with huge crowds. Like the number of NPCs in some scenes is kind of insane. And I just imagine the CPU just absolutely choking if they tried to do that in something like Unreal Engine 5. So anyway, interesting stuff. Speaking of other big recent game releases, Subnautica 2 has apparently sold over 4 million copies. Even though it's still only in early access, the peak player count was nearly 500,000 on Steam, which is crazy. But for people who have followed the development history of this game, you've got the whole drama going on with their publisher Krafton, and they apparently are going to have to pay out the $250 million bonus to the devs, at least according to, I found this story at IGN, and they seem to be citing a source what was it? I actually forgot off the top of my head where I did actually check where they were getting the source. Whatever, there we go. Korean Economic Daily said Krafton now faces that $250 million bill after agreeing to pay $3.12 for every $1, or up to $250 million to Unknown World's former shareholders every time the studio's revenue topped $69.8 million. Anyway, so interesting stuff if you've been following that. Now, I think that's all I've got for you guys today. Hope you guys found the video useful and or interesting. Let me know what you think about all of these developments in the comments section. Like, for example, are you interested in it like the 9070 GRE or the 5800X 3D or the 7700X 3D? Planning on any upgrades? I know it's a rough market for it right now. I really think this 5800X 3D might interest some people. If you're already on AM4 and you're wanting a CPU upgrade and not going to be buying into new RAM anytime soon. Anyway, let me know what you guys think, and I hope all of you have an excellent day.